I know you're here. You don't comment. You don't tell your story. You may not even subscribe. You just watch. And then you leave quietly. I want you to know something. I see you, too. I see the women who find these episodes late at night or in the early morning, the women who listen with the volume low, the women who hear one sentence and suddenly stop what they're doing because somebody just said something they thought belonged only to them. And still, you don't say anything. Maybe you've never told anyone what happened in your family. Maybe your daughter watches what you do online. Maybe someone else has already told the story about you, and you're afraid that anything you say will simply be used as evidence that they were right. Maybe you've learned what can happen when a mother says, "My child doesn't speak to me anymore." People look at you differently. There is often a question behind their eyes. What did she do? Maybe you've tried to explain. Maybe you've spent years explaining. Maybe you've gone over every conversation, every argument, every mistake, every apology, every moment when you could have said something differently. Maybe you've lain awake at night conducting trials in your own head. Prosecution, defense, witness, judge. Trying to determine exactly where everything went wrong. And maybe, eventually, you stop talking about it. Not because it stopped hurting, because talking about it became another place where you could be hurt. So now, you listen. You listen to someone else put language around something you haven't known how to name. And sometimes a sentence lands, not because it explains everything, but because you recognize yourself inside it. And there is a peculiar kind of relief in that. For a few minutes, you don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to prove that you were a good mother. You don't have to pretend you were a perfect one. You don't have to produce the texts or explain the history, pull up the photos, or tell somebody everything that happened before the moment everyone else knows about. You don't have to convince anyone that you loved your child. You don't even have to convince anyone that you are hurting. For a few minutes, you are simply allowed to recognize yourself. I think there are more women doing this than anybody realizes. Women carrying enormous grief, almost completely in private. Women who go to work, buy groceries, walk the dog, answer the phone, remember birthdays, see photographs, pass the restaurant where everybody used to meet, notice a child's favorite food in the grocery store, hear a name, see a family together, and keep moving. Because the world does not stop when someone you love decides to live without you. There is no funeral, no obituary, no casserole on the doorstep, no gathering where people tell stories about the person you lost. In fact, sometimes you aren't even allowed to call it a loss because they're still alive, somewhere, living, laughing, having birthdays, celebrating holidays, building a life you may know almost nothing about. And you are expected to somehow understand that this grief is different. Perhaps even that it isn't grief at all. But your body knows better. Your heart knows better. Absence has weight. And when that absence belongs to your own child, there are very few places where you can put it. So maybe this is one of those places. Not because I know exactly what happened in your family. I don't. Not because every estrangement is unjustified. It isn't. Not because parents never hurt their children. They do. And not because mothers are incapable of getting things wrong. God knows we are. But because none of those truths erase another one. The person who was left is still a human being, and her grief deserves to be witnessed to. That is why I want to say something directly to those of you who have never said anything here. You don't owe me your story. You don't owe this comment section your grief. You don't have to identify yourself. You don't have to tell us what happened. You don't have to defend your motherhood. You don't have to type a single word so that I know your pain exists. Your silence does not make your pain less real. You are allowed to sit quietly in this room. You are allowed to listen. You are allowed to recognize yourself. You are allowed to leave and come back tomorrow. And if there ever comes a day when you want to speak, there is a place for your voice here. But until then, I want you to hear this, especially you, the woman who has watched episode after episode and never once said, "This is me." The woman who has carried the whole story inside herself. The woman who wonders whether anybody would understand if she finally told the truth about how much this hurts. You don't have to speak for me to see you. I know you're here, and you are not invisible. Not here.